September 11th, 2001, a day that began like any other, with the city waking up to the usual hustle and bustle, people heading to work, children going to school, and the sun rising over the iconic skyline. But it ended in a way that would forever change the course of human history, leaving an indelible mark on the collective consciousness of the world. On that fateful morning, terrorists attacked the United States, targeting symbols of American power and commerce, striking fear into the hearts of millions. The images of the Twin Towers collapsing in a cloud of dust and debris, the Pentagon ablaze, and the chaos that ensued were broadcasted live, shocking the world. And the wreckage of Flight 93 in a Pennsylvania field, where brave passengers fought back, sacrificing their lives to prevent further devastation. These harrowing scenes were seared into the collective memory of the world, a stark reminder of the fragility of peace and security. The immediate aftermath was one of shock, disbelief, and profound grief as people tried to come to terms with the enormity of the loss. The world watched in horror as the events unfolded, struggling to comprehend the magnitude of the tragedy and the senselessness of the violence. The attacks on 9/11 were not just an attack on America, but an assault on the very idea of freedom, democracy, and a free and open society. In the face of this atrocity, the world came together, showing solidarity and support, standing united against terror and vowing to uphold the values of liberty and justice. The immediate response to the 9/11 attacks was swift and sweeping. Security protocols at airports and other public places were immediately heightened. Body scanners, pat-downs, and the removal of shoes became the new normal for air travelers. The Transportation Security Administration, or TSA, was created in November 2001 to enhance security measures and screen passengers and baggage at airports nationwide. Increased surveillance, including CCTV cameras, became commonplace in public spaces. The attacks exposed vulnerabilities that had not been anticipated, leading to a fundamental shift in security thinking. The world was put on high alert, and the specter of terrorism cast a long shadow over everyday life. The 9/11 attacks had profound geopolitical ramifications. The United States, under the leadership of President George W. Bush, declared a war on terror. The U.S., with the support of international allies, launched military operations in Afghanistan and Iraq, targeting al-Qaeda, the terrorist organization responsible for the 9/11 attacks, and the regimes that harbored them. The war on terror reshaped global alliances, with some countries joining the US-led coalition, while others expressed reservations or outright opposition. The Middle East became the epicenter of the war on terror, with far-reaching consequences for the region and the world. In the wake of 9/11, the United States embarked on a massive effort to bolster domestic security. The Patriot Act, a controversial piece of legislation, was passed by Congress and signed into law by President Bush just weeks after the attacks. The Patriot Act expanded the government's surveillance powers, allowing for the monitoring of phone calls, emails, and internet activity. It also made it easier for law enforcement agencies to detain suspected terrorists without trial. The Department of Homeland Security, or DHS, was created in 2002 to coordinate national security efforts across different agencies. The creation of the DHS marked the most significant reorganization of the federal government since World War II. Section 5, the Patriot Act, Balancing Security and Freedom. This landmark legislation was enacted in response to the tragic events of September 11, 2001, aiming to bolster national security. The Patriot Act sparked heated debate about the balance between security and civil liberties. Newsrooms and living rooms alike were filled with discussions on its implications. Proponents argued that the expanded powers were necessary to prevent future attacks. They believed that enhanced surveillance and intelligence gathering capabilities were crucial for national safety. Opponents countered that the law infringed on fundamental freedoms and could be used to target innocent people. They feared the erosion of privacy and the potential for abuse of power. The Patriot Act raised important questions about the trade-offs between security and freedom in a post-9/11 world. It forced society to confront the delicate balance between protecting citizens and preserving their rights. The debate over the Patriot Act reflected a broader tension between the need to protect national security and the importance of upholding civil liberties. Lawmakers and citizens alike grappled with these complex issues. This tension continues to shape policy decisions today. The ongoing discourse around privacy, surveillance, and security remains a critical aspect of legislative and public debate. The Patriot Act has been reauthorized several times, with some provisions modified or allowed to expire. Each reauthorization brings renewed scrutiny and discussion, reflecting the evolving landscape of national security and civil liberties. If you found this discussion insightful, please like this video and subscribe to our channel for more content on important issues shaping our world today. Section 6. The Global War on Terror, Allies and Conflicts. This monumental effort saw nations from around the world coming together in an unprecedented coalition, countries united under a common goal, sharing intelligence, resources, and military support to combat the growing threat of terrorism. The war on terror was not without its critics. From the very beginning, there were voices of dissent, questioning the strategies and motives behind the campaign. Some argued that it was a misguided and counterproductive endeavor that created more terrorists than it eliminated. Critics pointed out that the heavy-handed tactics and military interventions often led to civilian casualties, which in turn fueled resentment and radicalization. The wars in Afghanistan and Iraq were long and costly, both in terms of human life and financial resources. Thousands of soldiers and civilians lost their lives, and the financial burden ran into trillions of dollars, leaving lasting scars on both nations. The use of torture, drone strikes, and other controversial tactics further fueled anti-American sentiment in some parts of the world. These methods were heavily criticized by human rights organizations and sparked global debates about the ethics of such practices. The war on terror also had the unintended consequence of destabilizing the Middle East, creating power vacuums that were exploited by extremist groups like ISIS. The rise of ISIS brought new levels of violence and chaos to the region, further complicating the global fight against terrorism. The global fight against terrorism continues to evolve, with new threats emerging all the time. Nations must adapt their strategies and collaborate more closely than ever to address the complex and ever-changing landscape of global terrorism. Section 7. The Rise of Islamophobia, a Stain on Society. One of the most disturbing consequences of the 9/11 attacks was the rise of Islamophobia. Muslims in America and around the world were subjected to increased suspicion, discrimination, and hate crimes. The association of Islam with terrorism, fueled by some politicians and media outlets, created a climate of fear and mistrust. This prejudice against Muslims is not only morally wrong, but also counterproductive in the fight against terrorism. It is important to remember that the vast majority of Muslims are peaceful and law-abiding citizens who have nothing to do with terrorism. Combating Islamophobia requires education, understanding, and a commitment to inclusivity. Section 8. The Media's Lens, Shaping Public Perception. The media played a pivotal role in shaping public perception of the 9/11 attacks and their aftermath. The images of the attacks, broadcast repeatedly on television and online, left an indelible mark on the collective psyche. The media's coverage of the war on terror, while often informative, also contributed to a sense of fear and anxiety. The 24/7 news cycle, combined with the rise of social media, created an environment in which information, misinformation, and disinformation spread rapidly. The media has a responsibility to report accurately and fairly, avoiding sensationalism and stereotypes. Critical media literacy is essential for navigating the complex and often contradictory information landscape. Section 9. The Economic Fallout, a Global Recession. The 9/11 attacks had a significant impact on the global economy. The attacks themselves caused billions of dollars in damage, but the economic fallout extended far beyond the immediate destruction. The attacks led to a sharp decline in air travel as people were afraid to fly. This had a ripple effect on the tourism, hospitality, and other industries. The increased security measures put in place after 9/11 also came at a cost, both in terms of money and time. The attacks exposed the vulnerability of the global economy to disruption and highlighted the interconnectedness of the world. Section 10. The Enduring Legacy, a World Transformed. 23 years after the 9/11 attacks, their legacy continues to shape the world we live in. The war on terror, the rise of Islamophobia, and the erosion of civil liberties are just some of the ways in which 9/11 has cast a long shadow. The attacks also highlighted the importance of international cooperation, the need for dialogue and understanding, and the fragility of peace. The world learned a hard lesson about the devastating consequences of hatred and extremism. The events of 9/11 should serve as a reminder of the importance of vigilance, resilience, and compassion in the face of adversity. Section 11, Remembering 9/11's Lessons for the Future. As we remember the victims of 9/11 and honor the first responders who risked their lives to save others, let us also reflect on the lessons learned from that tragic day. The world must remain vigilant against the threat of terrorism, but we must also be careful not to let fear dictate our actions or erode our values. We must confront hate and prejudice in all its forms and work to build a more just and peaceful world. The legacy of 9/11 should be one of unity, resilience, and a shared commitment to creating a better future for all.